Maverick News. The world is watching. In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
What we were just talking about is how our politicians are waffling on this. They picked a side and then they kind of switch into the other side. They're got their finger in the air to see which way the wind is blowing. And we see that with President Biden. We see a lot of pro-Israel Democrats. You know, Democrats in the United States have always traditionally, Jews in the United States traditionally vote Democrat by a large margin.
Oh, yes.
They feel betrayed, backstabbed by President Biden, by this administration. And now it's an election year. They're looking for a place to go. And some of them will probably hold their nose and go vote for President Trump, even though they really don't want to. I think a lot of American Democrat Jews just do not like Donald Trump, but they feel like Trump is the only guy who offers the alternative, who will stand with Israel. But I'd like to point out that there is another option. There is an old school Democrat who's now running as a independent in this year's race. You do have a third option, who stands firmly and resolutely with Israel, and that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And as we well know, we've talked about it on this show ad infinitum, that he gets attacked every time he opens his mouth about this war. Anytime he reiterates his support for Israel, as the Kennedy family always did. His father, of course, gave his life for Israel. He was killed by a Palestinian terrorist in 1968 on the campaign trail. And his uncle, John F. Kennedy, started our special relationship with Israel. He was the first American president to actually sell arms to Israel when Truman and Eisenhower were prickly. They didn't want to do that. So this week, RFK Jr. gave an interview to Reuters. And they asked him about the Israel-Palestine conflict, of course, and the war in Gaza. His comments pretty much echoed exactly what we just heard the rabbi say. He said that Hamas is evil and must be destroyed.
In an interview with Reuters at his home in Los Angeles, independent U.S. presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. offered staunch support for Israel, calling it a, quote, moral nation that was justified in responding to the Hamas militant group in Gaza.
The world community has isolated Israel and said, you're on your own. And I think as long as Israel is in that position, its only choice is to destroy Hamas.
Kennedy, who is running against both Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican candidate Donald Trump, is facing the steep uphill battle of an American third-party candidate. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll put his support among registered voters at 15% versus 39% for Biden and 38% for Trump. And the 70-year-old environmental attorney understands he needs to distinguish himself from the two major party candidates.
I think people are looking for an alternative. How do we get them to let go of the fear and vote instead for hope, for faith in the future, for somebody who inspires them, for somebody they like?
Biden has defended Israel's right to respond to the October 7th attack by Hamas, but the president has stepped up pressure on the Middle East ally to reach a 6-week ceasefire in the conflict. Kennedy said he saw no reason for a truce.
Israel was in a ceasefire on October 7th. So what would be different this time? You know, I think Israel understands that for everybody to progress, Hamas has to be destroyed.
The Reuters poll shows Kennedy slightly more popular with voters 18 through 39 than he is with voters over the age of 40, a popularity he could put in jeopardy with his support for Israel. He said he didn't care.
I'm not concerned about whether people disagree with me. If somebody shows me that I'm wrong about an issue, I'm going to change my opinion. But let's talk about facts.
Kennedy is the nephew of former U.S. President John F. Kennedy and the son of former U.S. Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The library of his Spanish-style home is adorned with heirlooms, taxidermied animals, and carved wooden ducks. Outside his family name, he is perhaps most known for his anti-vaccine stance, a position that got him temporarily banned from Instagram in 2021 for spreading misinformation about vaccines and the COVID-19 pandemic. He disputes being labeled anti-vaccine and acknowledges that his positions and his political challenge to Biden put him at odds with relatives deeply tied to the Democratic Party.
My family has a long history with Joe Biden. Joe Biden has a bust of my father behind him at the Oval Office. There are 5 members of my family who work for the Biden administration or directly with the Biden administration. There are many, many others who are running NGOs that have relationships with the government, and I understand that my candidacy, my challenge of President Biden is troubling to them. I don't begrudge them their right to disagree with it.
Kennedy is unlikely to earn enough votes to win the White House, but strategists told Reuters he might pull enough support to deny Biden's re-election and put Trump back into office.
Who do you think he's going to hurt more, Rick? Trump or Biden? Take a guess.
I think he pulls from the Trump side.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, Bobby's goal, of course, is to take votes from both sides, but he hasn't been performing as well with Democrats until now. Because of the Gaza war, I see a lot more pro-Israel Democrats breaking away from the Democratic Party and away from President Biden. They're looking for an alternative, and they're taking a good look at RFK Jr. The thing they cannot get past, though, is this idea that he's an anti-vaxxer and that he's a conspiracy theorist, because they still love their vaccines. So they can't seem to get past that.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.